My name is Lisa Steele Maley. I'm the Executive Director and Dean at the Chaplaincy Institute of Maine, affectionately known as ChIME. And I am delighted to welcome all of you here tonight and to welcome back Polly and Catherine and Julie, who are here to share with us their experience at ChIME, post-ChIME, and in the work that they're doing in healthcare settings. So if you are not already on speaker view, I would encourage you to go to the top right-hand corner of your Zoom screen and put your settings on speaker so that you can see whomever is speaking sort of up close and personal. Gives you a chance to connect more closely with folks. And by way of format for the evening, we'll spend 30 to 40 minutes with Catherine and Polly and Julie sharing their stories. And then I have some questions for them, and then we'll turn it over to all of you for questions, either specific questions for the three of them or more general questions about CHIME's programs. And we do have a few other students and alumni in the room with us tonight, so they can chime in and answer as well. So to get us started, yeah, let's just begin, Julie and Catherine and Polly with introductions. Um, yeah, tell us your Chime year, a little bit about the path that brought you to Chime and what work you're currently doing now. Catherine, would you like to start us off?
I am happy to start. Hi, everyone. I see some familiar faces. Hello, Joanne. Good to see you. So many of the people that I was at Chime with here too. Nan. Yeah, Lynn. So my name is Catherine Pelletreau. I was ordained by Chime in 2024, and I took 3 years to do the program, unlike most people who take 2 years. Um, I had been in a long time career in health policy, and I kind of had two motivations. Just wanted to switch it up. I needed to do something different and just change things up and do something that I felt um, more passionately about and that I felt like was making more of a contribution. That was one thing. So the time was kind of ripe in my life. And then the second was I have an aunt who was a longtime professional chaplain. She was a longtime hospital chaplain in Maine and Massachusetts. And she had done all of the kind of family ceremonies. Um, for us, we have a fairly large extended family, and she did marriages and funerals and blessing ceremonies and baptisms and welcomings and just all these amazing events. And I wanted to do some of that. So I think I had, the urge towards chaplaincy from a pretty young age, from having watched her and had an affinity with her, and also kind of an affinity and a desire to do what I saw her doing. Um, and I also had this sense of kind of a faith unexplored that had been there in the background, um, but that I hadn't really engaged with. So that was going on too. And I was starting to get more interested in looking internally at what was important to me in my life and what I wanted to be doing. So all of that led me to Chime. And um, Lisa will remember this, but so I kept running into Chime all over the place. I saw a sign there, a friend mentioned it to me, blah, blah, blah. This is similar to many people's stories. And, somehow I was on the website checking it out. Somehow I was leaving a message for Lisa or my original call. Hi, this is who I am. Can we talk about this? Then I was like, oh, got to check the finances. And somehow I was just like, conjuring up money for it. And it just was all happening. And it felt very good and natural and just like the right move for me. And that has never changed. The whole time I was at Chime, and even now, looking back and where I am now, I just feel like I've been so lucky to be on this charmed path that's just really opened up, and all I've had to do is just put one foot in front of the other and get out of my own way. And it's been great. So now I'm actually temporarily living in Cape Cod. My parents need some help, so I'm down here and I'm working at Upper Cape Chaplaincy as a chaplain assigned to Falmouth Hospital. Um, so I work in a hospital and see patients and families and staff. We serve everybody there. It's not full time, it's probably about 20 hours a week, and about half of that is paid, half of it is unpaid. Um, I'm doing my third unit of continuing pastoral education, which I don't know, Lisa, maybe not too much detail about that now, but I guess it's just another area of development for chaplains, kind of a professional development for chaplains. So I'm doing my third unit of that, which is great. Um, my first unit, well, not quite actually. When I was at ChIME, I did my sort of apprenticeship volunteer work at Hospice of Southern Maine. Um, then I did the first unit of CPE at the Cedars, which is in Portland. Great experience at both of those places. And then I moved up here and I've been doing my hours at the hospital, and that's kind of transforming into a paid gig. Um, so I'm just really happy with how things are and grateful for Chime and looking forward to hearing from my friends Julie and Polly about what they're doing, how they are. And I think I'll stop there.
Thank you, Catherine. Julie or Polly, who feels called to jump in next?
I'll go ahead. Hi, everybody. It's great to see you. Um, yeah, I was ordained in 2024 also with Catherine. I was in the 2-year track with ChIME. I started in 2022 in the fall. I had known about ChIME for many, many years. I had some friends and colleagues who were in some of the very earliest cohorts in ChIME, and it was something that I had been thinking about for a long time because I have felt called to ministry since I was in high school. I grew up in the UCC church, but things changed in college and I sort of went in a different direction, sort of, but I stayed involved. I became a Unitarian Universalist, and was involved in UUism, actually since I left college in the late 80s. And I worked as a director of faith formation at a Unitarian Universalist church for 24 years, from 2000 to just before I was ordained in 2024. Um, I so I work currently as a hospice chaplain. I work for Beth Israel Lahey Home Health at Home in Rockingham County, New Hampshire. We're based in Exeter. I've been there since August of 2024. It was actually the first job that I applied for after I was ordained. Most hospice jobs that I had seen required at least one unit of CPE, which Catherine was just talking about. I applied for and was accepted into a CPE program that would begin in October of 2024. So I had not yet taken my CPE, but I had plans to do so. this particular job said that they did not require the CPE, but at least one unit would be preferred. So I was able to go in to my interview saying I haven't had it yet, but that's part of my plan for the fall. So I was hired there, and I began in August. And so my job is 28 hours a week. I'm one of two chaplains on staff. The other position is full-time. I had the option of being full-time, but because I was doing CPE, I opted for 28 hours a week. So my CPE is I spend 1 day a week down at Beverly Hospital in Beverly, Massachusetts. Oh, I should also say that I live in Amesbury, Massachusetts, right in the northeast corner of the state. So I'm right on the border of New Hampshire, very close to Exeter, where I work. So I'm spending 1 day a week down in Beverly, and 3.5 days working for hospice in Exeter. So as a hospice chaplain, I work with both patients and their families. We are an in-home agency, so I drive around to their homes or facilities. Some of them are in, facilities of different kinds. And we do also have some patients at Exeter Hospital. Patients come on when they opt for hospice, when they're in the hospital and they need to stay in the hospital for their comfort care needs. If their needs are too great to be taken care of at home, they do stay at Exeter Hospital. So we have some patients there as well. So I'm at the hospital usually Monday and Friday. I go for part of the day. And as I said, there's one other chaplain on staff. We're split up by geography, so I'm roughly on the east side on the coast, right on the seacoast, and she's inland. It's called the sand team and the granite team. And so for hospice, we have to contact all new admissions within 5 days of their being admitted. So we have to we call every patient on the phone to offer spiritual care support. And of course they can decline it. I would estimate that maybe maybe a third of our patients choose to have spiritual support. So a big part of my job is making calls to people to introduce myself and to try to explain what spiritual support is, what it might look like, because it looks like many different things to different people. And then if they agree to do that, then we'll schedule a visit and I will go out and visit with them. Once we've had that visit, we determine together how often they want to visit. Most people, it's once or twice a month. Some people want to meet once a week. Unfortunately, a lot of people come onto hospice very late, and I'll see them only once, maybe, or twice, which is unfortunate. So as I said before, I also work with families. So some patients, I'm really working more with the family than with the patient. I work with a number of people with dementia, and I have certain tools that I use with those folks. But those caregivers in particular seem to want and appreciate some extra support. And I make very clear from the beginning, even on that first phone call when I'm introducing myself, that it's not, spiritual care support is not necessarily about religion or even God, but, we do a lot of life review, for instance, because that's a really meaningful thing for folks to do at this stage in life, to just really kind of, it helps them make meaning of their life when they talk about things that have happened. I have a sort of formalized method of doing that, but most folks, it's just, yeah, it's just informal. If they wanted to think about, what their legacy is, and we can even work on creating legacy letters, that kind of thing, which is something that we learned about at ChIME. That was one of our modules at ChIME, which looking back has been extremely helpful to me. I kind of, my little tagline, if I want to just say it really quickly, to folks, is that, I'm here for comfort, counsel, and companioning. Um, Help figure out, think about their life's meaning, that kind of thing. So trying to think, I do another thing that I do is I can help folks with their plan a memorial service. I actually, in fact, have one coming up this Saturday, and I'm actively working on planning another one that will be somewhere down the road. So that's another kind of nice benefit that people don't always necessarily think of. And again, that's something else that I got a lot of that I learned about at ChIME. Get a lot of support on that, got some great resources. So that is, oh, and just, yeah. So I also am there to support staff in whatever way I can. Honestly, there hasn't been a whole lot of that aside from a lunchtime reflection email that my other chaplain colleague and I, we alternate weeks and we send out a little sort of inspirational email every week. And at our weekly IDT meetings, team meetings, we always offer the opening reflection or inspiration. So I'm working with her, the other chaplain, to sort of think about more ways that we can support staff, because that feels like an important piece of the job that I just have not yet gotten into very much. So I'll just stop my little intro spiel there. Thank you.
Thank you, Julie. Hi, everyone. I think it's my turn. My audio has been blinking out, or I haven't been hearing. Are you hearing? Is that happening to everyone? Okay, just making sure. So I might have missed you saying now it's your turn, Polly. Pretty sure it's my turn. Hi, everyone. I'm really glad to be here tonight. Thank you for taking your time to learn about healthcare chaplaincy with a few, at least I'll speak for myself. I very much feel like a baby chaplain. So I feel like, okay, I can tell you, my experiences so far. I'm happy to answer some questions, and I am at a very beginning stage in my chaplaincy career. So put that right up front. You got that? I was ordained in 2023 and I took 4 years. So I think I get the 4-year medal. It took me 4 years to finish ChIME because I took a full year off due to the pandemic. In the middle of those, I started in 2019. So I live about an hour and a half north of Portland. So I was traveling to Portland for my first year once a week for classes and then once a month for seminars. And then everything changed in the pandemic and we sort of went online for the second half of that. And then I had a year off and then we were back and pretty much only online. So I was one of the pandemic ChIME people. But it was that's not really a that's not really an important part of um, of it actually. It's just kind of a fact. So my current work is at the Waldo Hospital. It's part of the Maine Health System. It's Belfast. It's in Belfast, Maine. And I was hired in July. And this was pretty much like my dream job. I'm just gonna put it out there.
Like, I went to ChIME kind of on a wing and a prayer. Like, I feel really called to work in institutions. I really, again, be totally transparent. I wasn't quite sure about the pathway through to get to be qualified to do that work. So I just said, well, I think I need to learn about my own personal theology, get more clear about that, and the 2-year chaplaincy training program will, by reading the syllabus and talking to the admissions folks, I just felt like, okay, that's gonna put me a few steps towards that goal. So, so the job opened up at the Waldo Hospital. The previous chaplain was retiring, and I heard that, and I heard that about a year ago, that she would be retiring in May of 2024. So I'm making this way too complicated, guys. Sorry. Um, I quickly decided I needed to do a unit of CPE in order to be considered as for this hospital position. So I did a unit of CPE last January. I did my 300 hours of clinical time at the Bangor Hospital, Northern Light, which is about 1,000-bed hospital, and with the ChIME affiliated program for CPE with Lori Whittemore and Katherine. Pelletreau was in my cohort. It was amazing. Um, so that was sort of prepared me to apply to this job, and then I got the job at the Waldo Hospital in July, and I started there. I felt fairly competent because of those 300 hours of CPE, where I really just was with patients, and I was in a hospital, and I was in the ICU and in the emergency department, and really at bedside for almost all of those hours. It taught me how to write patient notes for other providers, so providers could learn from the spiritual assessment that I um, engaged the patients and families with. So healthcare chaplaincy, I love I love that spiritual care providers are in the ecology of a hospital. That's basically like, Julie, you had your tagline. I just love that when hospitals acknowledge that patients and their families and healthcare providers are um, capable of existential, spiritual, and religious pain and suffering, and that sometimes care of that sort is really necessary. So I love, I love that chaplaincy is still, um, a really valued discipline in the healthcare settings. Um, and I feel very honored to be, you know, employed. I'm 20 hours a week. It's a small hospital. There are 26 beds and a 4-bed ICU and about 10 beds in the emergency department. There's an oncology department that I also can serve. Um, and I sometimes get called down to another hospital for a very emergency situation. But basically I serve like kind of like my hometown hospital. So it really just is my dream job. So I'm very, very happy to be there. I think I'll stop there. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you, Polly. I had sent Julie and Catherine and Polly a list of questions that we might address tonight in advance, but I'm feeling called to ask a question that's not on that list. Um, I am, you each spoke a little bit about your time at ChIME and CPE, and Polly, you just mentioned the CPE, the place where you did your clinical hours for CPE. I wonder if you could each talk a little bit about the experiences you got volunteering through CPE, but also through your internships at ChIME in the Interfaith Ministry program. Could you say just a little more about that, Polly? You could start us off.
Yeah, I can start. Um, and I've told you this, Lisa, many times. My favorite part of Chime was the internships and the volunteering. So in year one, every student is required to volunteer for 75 hours. And in the second year, everyone is required to do an internship for 75 hours. I think those are still the standards. Is that right, Lisa?
150 each year.
Oh dear. Okay. Okay. 150. um, so uh, that was, I am a very much a hands-on person. I didn't mention this, but my previous career, really my whole adult life until age 40, age 50, was as is I still own an organic vegetable farm. So I am very much a person who's used to problem solving and working outside and managing people and crew and animals and things like that. So the very much the hands-on, the being in place, um, at an internship, at a volunteer position in a hospital was really definitely my favorite part of the CHIME experience. And classes and seminars were wonderful too, but I am very much I'm a hands-on learner. So I did my just quickly, I did my volunteer work in my first year with the Hospice Volunteers of Waldo County. So I co-facilitated, I think, 3 different bereavement groups, one in a junior high, one in a high school, and one with recently widowed um, people. So that and I helped just sort of in the thought uh, in thinking about that volunteer organization. Um, and then my second year, by 150 hours of internship, I did at Inland Hospital in Waterville, Maine, and that's about half an hour in the other direction for me. Not really my hometown, but like close enough. And I really did want to have a hospital experience if I could. Um, and that was, I think, I don't remember how many beds in that hospital, but a little bit bigger than the hospital I'm in right now. So that's all.
So I think I mentioned my first year experience was with Hospice of Southern Maine. I took their training course, which is incredible, and I recommend it to all of you, whether you do CHIME or not. Um, and then I was a sort of volunteer for hospice and going and visiting with patients in their homes. And I think every patient I saw was in the home setting. So I did not end up going to any institutional settings for that. And often ended up talking to family, um, where I had my first experience losing people that I had worked with. Um, and then the second one was at the Cedars, and the Cedars was really awesome experience because um, I came in through the activities department. They do not have a chaplaincy program there, so I didn't really have a supervisor or chaplain to tell me what to do. Nobody really to shadow, so I came in through the activities department. And I was going 5 days a week, and I had each day in a different part of the Cedars. So we'd have one day, maybe 1 or 2 days in the dementia, the area with memory care, assisted living, skilled nursing care, that type of thing. And I did sort of a combination of going around and meeting with people individually, and I'd go to the nurse's station and say, who do you think might like a visit today? And they would tell me, and I would go to that room or that person and just sit down and have a chat. And sometimes they're incredibly profound, and sometimes it's just doing a puzzle with somebody. Um, Loved working with the memory care. I thought they were great. We would bat balloons around and, write poems together. Um, so it wasn't as much kind of deep, cogent talk, but it was fun. And there's a lot of presence and connection with people who have dementia. Just presence and connection in that time and space. That's that I love being around. Yeah. So those are my two experiences. And then as I moved into CPE and came down here, I started at the hospital. But ChIME was great. And I struggled finding, I don't know if you remember this, Lisa, but I struggled for a while in there. I said, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? I got to find the right internship, whatever that is, right? I was kind of stuck on finding the right thing. And ChIME was really helpful, not giving it to me, just saying, well, there's lots of opportunities out there, and here's some, ideas and things, but we're ready for you to do what works for you. And so they didn't hand it to me, and I had to kind of go through some struggle to land at the Cedars, and it turned out to be wonderful. And I really appreciated not being told what to do. It didn't feel like I appreciated it at the time, but in retrospect, I really appreciate it.
So I did my first year of service at a facility that does equine therapy with people with disabilities. I was a sidewalker, um, which was amazing. I absolutely loved that. And then for my second year internship, when I entered ChIME, I sort of had it in my mind that I wanted to be in end of life care. So I thought that my internship would be with hospice. I ended up looking at I went to the Dover, New Hampshire facility where they had advertised 3 internships, and you could do all 3 and divide your time, or you could do 2, or you could do 1, and and they're all on the same campus. It's a hospice house, a nursing home, and a jail. And so I went there, and long story short, I ended up at the jail because I mean, that I was just so taken when I went to visit and spoke with the chaplain there, and I just heard about, what the opportunities there could be, and I decided I did not want to divide my time up in these 3 places, and I just wanted to be at the jail. And so that's what I did my second year. And I actually ended up, I did about 300 hours there, because I did it for the whole school year, 1 full day a week. And it was amazing. It, I just, I couldn't believe the opportunities I was given to work, with, the inmates, both in groups and, one-on-one, you know, designing my own programs, and just it truly was so formative for me as a chaplain, and so much so that by the time I ended, I thought maybe I wanted to go into prison chaplaincy. Um, Although the problem with that was that, being in that environment physically is very difficult. Just anyway. So I wasn't absolutely certain, but it was something that I was thinking about. And then, as I said, this hospice job opened, and I said, yeah, I think that really is sort of where I want to be. My CPE, I just can't believe how how things turned out as they did. Because as I was approaching the CPE, which started in October, a couple weeks before we started, I realized that there it really wasn't going to work logistically. I mean, not even in terms of my own bandwidth and so forth. The actual limited hours for both. I had to squeeze in, my 28 work hours, and then CPE is 10 clinical hours plus 8 or 6.5 hours of classroom time per week, all between, Monday through Friday. And I didn't see how logistically I could make that work. And so I contacted my CPE supervisor to talk to her. And it turns out that since Beverly Hospital is also in the Beth Israel Lahey network, that I was able to use a lot of my work hours as my clinical hours. So that's been like a godsend, because I don't think I would have been able to do it otherwise. I do still do some clinical hours at the hospital. I do a few hours a week, and then I've had some Saturday on calls down there. So that's it's just worked out really well for me.
Thank you, Julie. It's really, really fun to hear from each of you about where you've been and how things feel in retrospect, having spent time with you 2 to 4 years in um, sort of in the depth of the program, and now to see where it's led you is really, really sweet. My next question is, I'll, I guess, just a little more about what, not so much what your day to day looks like, but if you could, I know obviously all of your work is confidential with your clients and your patients, but if you could share a story or an experience that to you was an, oh, I made a positive impact today, where you could walk away clear that you had you had contributed positively to someone's day, and just share 1 or 2 stories.
I've got two good ones. I mean, they're all good. So, um, I see most of the patients that I see at the hospital are one-timers, although now I've been there long enough so that I'm starting to see the repeats. So frequent flyers or people who have substance abuse issues who end up cycling through regularly, or get exacerbations of chronic diseases and things like that. But this individual, one of the individuals I'm going to tell you about, this individual was a man just like my father. And he ended up in the ICU. He had to have surgery, kind of an emergency surgery. And while he was in the hospital, he had a heart, I don't know, attack or an event, a heart event. So he was trying to recover from this emergency surgery, and then had realized that he had this fairly major heart problem that had emerged just then. Um, so I went to visit him, and his significant other was there. They had also been visited by their pastor. They were affiliated with a church, although not members. And so they'd been visited by their pastor, but we just kind of hit it off and were chatting. And I was doing my version of assessment. Where do you find strength? What brings you comfort? Those types of questions. And, how do you kind of keep your cool on the outside of the hospital? What might there be in that we could bring in here to help? Anyway, he kept talking about Tai Chi. He was into Tai Chi. And he relied on Tai Chi to keep his cool. And he was petrified that he wasn't going to be able to do it anymore. And at this particular time in his illness, he couldn't really get up or walk. He was hooked up to all kinds of things. Um, when I was visiting with him, he was waiting for dinner, and he was sitting up in sort of like a lazy boy type of situation with his feet out. But not, as I say, not really able to move. Anyway, long story short, I picked up on the Tai Chi and said, let's do some. And I just got up in the room and I did Tai Chi. And I just breathed through it with him. And he saw the moves I was doing. He had names for them. He would move his hand a little to go with me. And his feet were kind of down on the lazy boy. And so I was, I don't know how many of you do Tai Chi, but there's some, you kind of gather your own energy and you have an energy ball. And anyway, so I worked with some energy and then I put it into his feet. And he just started absolutely bawling in the most beautiful, positive way. And his partner was there and came over and was also crying. And it just was a really moving, beautiful, religious but not religious type of thing, where I was able to pick up on something that he kept coming back to, um, and just use it and be creative with it. And I don't think I would have had the chutzpah to do it if I hadn't gone to Chime and realized how broad spirituality can be. And that, spontaneity and presence and creativity have a huge place in spirituality. It was a really, really rewarding visit. I'll stop with that one.
I I can go. Um, I actually had some difficulty thinking of one sort of dramatic, um, really interesting story. Um, so I can just say that the instances where I feel like I've made a difference have been when I've supported family, particularly at end of life. There have been times, when I've come into the room where the patient is actively dying, unresponsive, have sat with the family, provided space for them to talk about their loved one, like draw out stories, that sort of thing. I typically offer a prayer or blessing, um, which was which was challenging at the beginning, but I'm definitely becoming a lot more comfortable with that, and that's something that they really seem to appreciate, even if it's like a little rough around the edges. They know it's sincere. So those bedside visits have actually turned out to be pretty much my favorite type of visit. They're very um beautiful, actually. Um, and there was one patient's daughter who they had declined spiritual care at the beginning, but as her mom was getting closer to end of life, she reached out and she asked if she could talk to a chaplain, and she and I connected, and we ended up talking every week on the phone. We had sort of this standing date on Fridays where we would just check in. She was having this spiritual distress over, why isn't God answering my prayers? I just want her to be at peace. And, I was able to offer her some resources and so forth, but she really um, just needed somebody to talk to who would just listen. I mean, she told me that's what she appreciated the most, was that she just had somebody who would listen to her. And as it turns out, this is the memorial service that I'm doing this Saturday. So it's nice. I've gotten to sort of stay connected with that family.
This is Polly. So it's difficult. It's difficult to choose one because, like Catherine alluded to, and Julie, you did as well. Um, there are some days that maybe like make a better story, right? Scenes that make a good story. So I can tell you a good story that you'll probably enjoy, because I would have enjoyed hearing it. But I want to impress like on myself, because I remind myself every day that every room is like that person's universe, right? So some rooms like fall together in a story that can be told and shared and is funny or heart-wrenching or something. But really every room that I enter, and this is my spiritual practice of just remembering that this is this person's whole universe. When I enter that room into their stuck spot, into their pain, challenge, decision making, family mess, whatever, like this is their universe. So I just want to like bracket that. Thank you for entertaining me. So this, one story that started out as a day that started out as a no, but turned into a yes. This is my entry to this story. A nurse called me in the morning through the switchboard and said, "We have a patient in the ICU who would like to be married. Is that something you could do?" And I said, "No, not up for it." and, and I hung up. And then I got myself together and I said, "Well, wait a second. Why are you not up for it? Just because you're not prepared? Just because you're not what?" So I called her back and I said, "On second thought, I would love to marry a patient in the ICU. He was nearing the end of his life. He had been with his partner for 7 years. Um, and this was really what he wanted and they wanted. And so so the nurse manager bought a cake and champagne glasses with fizzy juice and set up a whole thing. I brought a beautiful little table in from the chapel and a big candle and some flowers and put on my stole. In the hospital, I don't wear my stole around, but that is a precious, precious piece of my ordination and my identity as a chaplain. So I was able to wear my stole at the hospital and marry these two amazing universes to each other. And that was I think special, really meaningful too to the other staff. I love to serve the hospital staff. So my yes was not only a yes to those patients, but was a yes to those ICU nurses, the nurse manager who really wanted to make this happen, wanted to have some sort of happy-ish ending in this couple's you know really really heartbreaking time. So that's my good story. But remember, the moral of the story is not every story is that good. Quote.
Okay, I can't help myself. I have one more question and then we'll open it up to the rest of the room. But Polly, you mentioned your spiritual practice of remembering each room as that person's universe. And I wonder, um, well, A, if you have any other spiritual practices you'd like to name that support you in staying grounded for your work. And then I'd love to hear from Catherine and Julie also about any spiritual practices that support you in your work right now.
I can start with just a few more. I mean, I need to have outside time. I need to have alone time. I need to have time when I talk to um, myself, spirit, nature, um, stretching, exercise. Those are spiritual practices to me. They keep me grounded.
I will go. Yeah, I've had the same sort of practices for a very long time. I have a very early morning practice. I get up while it's still dark and I do an embodied practice, which had been yoga, but I'm now moving into Qigong. Um, and I pray and journal. And yeah, I do a lot of journaling. And sometimes that varies. Sometimes I will create a mandala or do some reading or something like that. But that's been pretty steady for many years. I have fairly recently been more aware of energy and how we are really energy bodies. And this is kind of where the Qigong comes in. But I also recently got certified in Reiki. And I've just become aware of how when I enter a room, people, people are picking up what I'm bringing in before I even say anything. And so it's been really important for me to just sort of do energy work and be aware of how I'm um entering people's space, and what kind of energy do I want to bring into that space.
Yeah, I have things I do on my own. Um, similar to what other people have said, certainly nature. I got turned on to Beverly Lanzetta at ChIME, and I love her writings and her prayers. And so I will often read some of those prayers, a couple prayers when I wake up in the morning before I get out of bed, and just be with them a little bit. Certainly stretching, legs up the wall, meditation, those kinds of things. But I do have a kind of evolving way of trying to clear myself in the hospital. So my routine, I'm in the chaplain's office and you print out the census and I figure out who I'm going to see, kind of try to, make a plan for the day. And before I leave the office, I kind of take a moment. I ask for guidance. Please be with me in the hospital today. Help me be of service to these people. Help me bring solace, comfort. And please use me, basically. And then I will go out. And the way I get to there's 4 floors in the hospital. It's an 88-bed community hospital. And each floor has like a stairwell with a giant glass wall. And it looks outside over this beautiful, sort of woods, sort of sky. And I will stop before entering the floor and just kind of collect myself, and look out at the sky and see the birds flying by. And that's time passing. And that there's so much goodness in the world. And I'll try to take some of that in so that I can bring it with me. So that's my normal routine. But lately, I've got a new thing because I got a piece of feedback from one of my supervisors, which was that I was a little too exuberant and, enthusiastic. And the suggestion was, can I tone it down? Just try to be a little blanker, because it could be that if I come in, I'll say, I'm somehow removing the space for something really heavy for somebody. So I want to be able to have enough gravitas that I can send a signal to them that I can handle something heavy. So that's what I've been working on lately. And the way I'm doing that is I have this new hand motion. It's this. This is me. This is my triggers and myself and not myself, but my kind of my outward facade and my triggers. And I throw them away before I go into the room and try to cultivate a little bit more blankness. Too much marketing, politics, diplomat's daughter, all that stuff. So I bring all that on my face when I come in, and I'm trying to be a little bit blanker, a little bit less. It sounds funny to say less me, but a little bit less me to make more space for whatever else is happening in the room, 'cause it's not about me. So I consider that a spiritual practice too.
Paul, thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you for receiving all of my